In this module, we will discuss chain reactions as an example of complex reactions. Many gas phase reactions proceed as chain reactions. Examples of chain reactions include pyrolysis, the thermal decomposition of chemical substances in the absence of oxygen, and polymerization reactions, where monomers react in a chain process to form polymers. In a chain reaction, an intermediate formed in one step reacts further, generating a new intermediate in a subsequent step, which also forms new intermediates, continuing the sequence. The species propagating the chain reaction in this manner are called chain carriers. The nature of the chain carriers depends on the reaction type. In the radical chain reactions used as examples in this lecture, the chain carriers are radicals, species with unpaired electrons. However, in some liquid phase polymerization reactions, the chain carriers can be ions instead of radicals. A chain reaction follows a sequence of elementary reactions typically characterized into three main stages. Initiation, the formation of active chain carriers from a precursor species. Propagation, the chain carriers react with other species, continuously generating new chain carriers. Termination. Chain carriers are removed, usually by recombination, stopping the propagation process. In the initiation step, an initiator species reacts to form chain carriers, such as radicals. This step is necessary to start the chain reaction. In the propagation steps, a radical chain carrier reacts with the original reactant or other non-radical species, forming both radical and non-radical products. The newly formed radicals continue the chain reaction by reacting with further non-radical species. The reaction ends in termination steps, where radicals are removed from the system. This typically occurs by recombination, where two radicals form a non-radical product, but also by reactions with walls or inhibitors. If chain carriers are lost or stop reacting, the chain reaction ceases. Now, let's examine an important example of a chain reaction, the formation of hydrogen bromide from hydrogen and bromine. This reaction was extensively studied by Max Bodenstein, who first determined its empirical, experiment-based rate law in 1906. Before that, Bodenstein observed a second-order rate law for the formation of hydrogen iodide. However, when investigating the formation of hydrogen bromide, he found that the rate law was significantly more complex and could not be explained by a simple mechanism. Bodenstein determined the following empirical rate law for this reaction. The rate of hydrogen bromide formation expressed as the time derivative of its concentration equals K times the concentration of hydrogen multiplied by the concentration of bromine raised to the power of 3/2 and divided by the concentration of bromine plus K prime times the concentration of hydrogen bromide. Due to this complexity, a proper mechanism for hydrogen bromide formation was established only 13 years later. Christiansen, Herzfeld and Polanyi independently proposed in 1919 the presently accepted multi-step mechanism for this reaction, explaining Bodenstein's findings. The proposed mechanism consists of the following steps. Initiation. The reaction begins with the dissociation of a bromine molecule into two bromine atoms. This step introduces radicals into the system and is assigned the rate constant K1. This step is an example of thermolysis, a reaction initiated by heat, which stimulates intermolecular collisions. Propagation. The bromine radical reacts with a hydrogen molecule to form hydrogen bromide and a hydrogen radical. This step propagates the chain reaction and is assigned the rate constant K2. The newly formed hydrogen radical reacts with another bromine molecule, producing another hydrogen bromide molecule and regenerating a bromine radical, thus sustaining the reaction chain. This step is assigned the rate constant K3. At each propagation step, a new radical is formed, ensuring that the reaction continues. Inhibition. Additionally, the hydrogen radical can attack a hydrogen bromide molecule, the product, leading to the regeneration of a hydrogen molecule and a bromine radical. This step is essentially the reverse of step 2 and is assigned the rate constant K2'. It does not terminate the reaction as it still produces a chain carrier, but it reduces the net rate of product formation. Termination. The reaction terminates when two bromine radicals recombine to form bromine molecule, with the third body M removing the energy of recombination. This step removes chain carriers from the system. As it can be seen as simply the reverse of the initiation step, it is assigned the rate constant K1'. Other possible termination steps include the recombination of hydrogen radicals to form hydrogen molecule and combination of hydrogen and bromine radicals. However, only bromine radical recombination is significant because bromine radicals propagate the chain more slowly and live longer than hydrogen radicals. This figure illustrates the mechanism of the reaction between hydrogen and bromine, excluding the inhibition step. Bromine radicals are introduced into the cycle in the initiation step and removed in the termination step. In the propagation stage, a bromine radical reacts with a hydrogen molecule, producing hydrogen bromine and a hydrogen radical, while a hydrogen radical in turn reacts with a bromine molecule, producing hydrogen bromide and a bromine radical. Note how the reactants and products are shown entering and exiting the cycle, but the chain carriers, hydrogen and bromine radicals, occur only on the cycle. Now, an important point. To verify the proposed reaction mechanism, we need to demonstrate that it leads to the experimentally observed rate law. Our objective now is to derive the rate law, an expression for the formation rate of hydrogen bromide, from the reaction mechanism. To do this, we analyze how the concentration of hydrogen bromide changes over time, considering contributions from each elementary reaction step. we identify the specific steps in which hydrogen bromide is produced or consumed and incorporate the corresponding rate expressions into the rate equation. Since all steps in the mechanism are elementary reactions, their rate laws follow directly from their stoichiometry. The formation of hydrogen bromide includes contributions from the following elementary reactions. Reaction 2. The reaction of a bromine radical with a hydrogen molecule, producing hydrogen bromide and a hydrogen radical. Reaction 3. The reaction of a hydrogen radical with a bromine molecule, producing hydrogen bromide and a bromine radical. The consumption of hydrogen bromide occurs in reverse reaction 2, where a hydrogen radical reacts with hydrogen bromide, reforming a hydrogen molecule and a bromine radical. This gives the following expression. The time derivative of the hydrogen bromide concentration equals K2 times the concentration of bromine radicals times the concentration of hydrogen molecules plus K3 times the concentration of hydrogen radicals times the concentration of bromine molecules minus K2 prime times the concentration of hydrogen radicals times the concentration of hydrogen bromide. At this stage, we have derived a mathematical expression for the formation rate of hydrogen bromide. However, it still contains unknown concentration of hydrogen radicals and bromine radicals, making it unusable in its current form. To simplify the expression for the formation rate of hydrogen bromide, we apply the steady-state approximation. To do so, we assume that the concentration of intermediates, chain carriers, remains constant over time. Mathematically, we set the time derivatives of the hydrogen and bromine radical concentrations to 0. We again identify the steps in which they are produced or consumed and include the corresponding rate expressions into the rate equation. For the hydrogen radical, we consider its formation in reaction 2 and its consumption in reaction 3 and reverse reaction 2. This leads us to the following expression. The time derivative of the hydrogen radical concentration equals K2 times the concentration of bromine radicals times the concentration of hydrogen molecules minus K3 times the concentration of hydrogen radicals times the concentration of bromine molecules minus K2 prime times the concentration of hydrogen radicals times the concentration of hydrogen bromide. Applying the steady-state approximation, we equate this expression to 0. Similarly, for the bromine radical, we consider formation in reaction 1, the initiation step, in reaction 3, in reverse reaction 2, and consumption in reaction 2, and in reverse reaction 1, the termination step. Summing the rate expressions for these steps, we obtain the following equation. The time derivative of the bromine radical concentration equals 2 times K1 times the concentration of bromine molecules plus K3 times the concentration of hydrogen radicals times the concentration of bromine molecules plus K2 prime times the concentration of hydrogen radicals times the concentration of hydrogen bromide, minus K2 times the concentration of bromine radicals times the concentration of hydrogen molecules, minus 2 times K1 prime times the square of the concentration of bromine radicals. We also set this expression equals to 0. Since the expressions for the time derivatives of the hydrogen and bromine radical concentrations sum to 0, we can manipulate them algebraically to simplify our derivations. First, we simplify the expression for the hydrogen bromide formation rate by subtracting the equation for the time derivative of the hydrogen radical concentration. The result is 2 times K3 times the concentration of hydrogen radicals times the concentration of bromine molecules. There are several ways to derive an expression for the steady-state concentration of intermediates, but the simplest procedure starts by summing the steady-state equations for the hydrogen and bromine radicals. The resulting equation simplifies significantly compared to the original expressions. 2 times K1 times the concentration of bromine molecules minus 2 times K1 prime times the square of the concentration of bromine radicals equals 0. From this, we solve for the steady-state concentration of bromine radicals, which is equal to the square root of K1 divided by K1 prime times the square root of the concentration of bromine molecules. Next, we substitute this expression into the steady-state equation for the hydrogen radical, leading to the following equation. Rearranging the previous expression yields an equation for the concentration of hydrogen radicals. Thus, we have an expression for the hydrogen radical concentration in terms of the hydrogen molecule concentration, the bromine molecule concentration, and the hydrogen bromide concentration. Now, we substitute the steady-state concentration of the hydrogen radical into the simplified rate equation for the hydrogen bromide formation. Rearranging, we obtain the following expression. We can simplify this expression further by introducing new rate constants. A new rate constant for the numerator, a quotient of constants for the denominator. With these definitions, we obtain the rate law which matches the experimentally observed rate law found by Bodenstein. Thus, by proposing a chain reaction mechanism and analyzing its individual steps, we have successfully derived Bodenstein's empirical rate law for the formation rate of hydrogen bromide.